It's December 8th, 2025, and it's pretty cold for a significant portion of the US, but it could get even colder as we head towards the weekend. A shot of Arctic air is expected to move in from southern Canada, which could give us the coldest air we've seen since last winter, with the potential of a few winter storm systems on the way as well. So let's take a look at this forecast and see just how much colder things could get. As we look at current temperatures, we have some pretty cold conditions across the Midwest into the Northeast. Temperatures running anywhere from the teens to single digits to the 20s for places like New York and Boston, as we continue to see well below average conditions across these regions. Meanwhile, the West Coast is actually seeing some above average conditions, and it doesn't look like this pattern is going to change much. If anything, it gets a little more extreme as we move towards the weekend. Of course, in order to have cold air stick around, you need to have snow on the ground this time of the year, and that's what we have from the plains into the Midwest and into the Northeast as well. Places like Iowa and Chicago after their snowiest starts in quite some time. Chicago picking up nearly as much snow as they had all last season. So to put things into perspective, it's been a cold and snowy start to December thus far, which actually continued from parts of the end of November. Now, this cold pattern is going to get a little more intense moving into next weekend, and we're not even expecting this snow to move very much in these areas, so expect more cold air in the same spots that we've seen so far this December. So the upcoming pattern is more or less the same, just a little more intense. As you can see, the warm weather still sticking around the Southwest and the colder than average conditions from the Midwest into the Northeast. It does go well below average for the Northeast into Sunday and Monday of next week, but a good portion of the Midwest will feel this cold weather as well. And weather patterns are largely driven by the jet stream. As you can see, the jet continues to dip to the south from the Midwest into the Northeast, keeping the core of the colder air over these areas. And as you can see, this weekend's forecast, another dip in the jet stream is expected. However, one big change behind this pattern is we are going to see a warm up through the Midwest and Northeast about a week before Christmas. So if you're looking forward to a white Christmas, this may have some effects on those plans, even for locations that have a decent amount of snow in these regions. So that's something we'll be tracking behind the cold, but we still have to get through the colder days ahead through the weekend. So as the dip in the jet stream approaches, it will drag in some really cold air from parts of northwestern Canada and Alaska down through parts of the Midwest and then into the Northeast. This will allow temperatures to drop as cold as 30 to 40 degrees below average low temperatures. So this is a really cold shot of air and the coldest we've seen since last winter. So as we take it day by day here, this is next Saturday, and you can see across the Midwest going into the northern plains, temperatures will be well below average in these areas, as cold as 30 to 35 degrees below average. So this is certainly some really cold stuff coming in here, and we will likely see wind chills well below zero in these areas for a few days. And this is going into Sunday's forecast. As you can see, the core of the cold now moving into parts of northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, and Iowa. And we could potentially see those wind chills well below zero in these areas with actual temperature readings of about 10 below, as that would be about 30 degrees to even 35 degrees below average low temperatures. Notice the cold air actually makes its way down into Texas on Sunday and through parts of Arkansas and Tennessee, where you could see temperatures 15 to 20 degrees below average low temperatures, and then this will work its way towards the Northeast as we go into Sunday night and Monday. By midday on Monday, the cold air has settled in even into the southeast, where we could see temperatures as cold as 20 below the average temperatures through parts of North Carolina, going into South Carolina and Tennessee as well. This will work its way into Virginia and, of course, into the Northeast, where we could see temperatures 30 degrees below average for New York State, going into New England as well. But then the cold air will just hang on as we go into Monday, as the warmer stuff now will start building from the West Coast and enter the plains. So on Tuesday, the cold air is still holding on, but it's not quite as bad as it was. But notice through the Midwest, through Wisconsin and Michigan, still well below average temperatures there. And of course, into the Northeast and New England, this will be the second day in a row of really cold stuff moving through there next week. But notice the heat basically replacing the cold, working its way through parts of southern Canada, upwards of 25 to even 30 degrees above average as the warm air battles back. Of course, this is all model driven. It may change some. It might not be quite as intense that is forecasted here, but we still will see significant changes on the way from really cold stuff back to really mild conditions as we head through the middle of December. So here's a look at the wind chills going into Saturday's forecast. This is one of the coldest days we'll have across the U.S. into the weekend. And you can see through the northern plains, those wind chills will be dropping to anywhere from 30 to 40 degrees below zero. So this is some really serious cold working its way in. And like I mentioned, the models tend to be a little overexcited about this cold, so it might not be quite that cold. But we could easily still see wind chills 30 degrees below zero in these areas and potentially below 25 degrees below zero for parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota. So this is some really cold stuff working its way in on Saturday. And wind chills could even dip into the single digits for parts of central Missouri, going into Indiana, and then eventually getting even farther south on Sunday. And you can see on Sunday's forecast, those wind chills dip below zero for parts of Indiana and Illinois, and even getting down to the teens for parts of Tennessee, even Arkansas and Kansas as well. Meanwhile, the Midwest still solidly below zero and anywhere from 15 to 20 degrees below zero expected there. And then the cold air will start to make its way into the Northeast, but the wind chills won't be quite as bad as they get towards the East Coast on Monday and Tuesday. So with this amount of cold air in the forecast into next weekend, you think we'd be talking about some pretty significant winter storm systems. That usually happens when we have a clashing of air masses, but this time around it doesn't look like we're going to see anything really significant on the way here. There will be a few clipper systems that ride along the colder air that will produce some snow, but I do think the bigger storm systems are actually happening right now on the colder outbreak that we have across the country. It's not quite as extreme as the one into the weekend, but we have a couple weather systems moving through. And once we head towards the middle of the month, as things warm up, we may see a storm system try to develop on the East Coast. Still, the models are uncertain about that, but the clippers will continue to show up, and it looks like that'll happen all the way into the Christmas vacation week as well. So currently, I'm tracking a few winter storm systems across the U.S. One of these storm systems is along the East Coast, which did produce a decent amount of snow for parts of North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia today. That storm system is just about to wrap up, so we're not going to see too much from it through the next few hours. Meanwhile, in the Midwest, we are tracking a pair of clipper systems, one that's actually moving in now and another one to follow as we head into Tuesday afternoon. So a couple weather systems that could bring significant snow to the region once again. And we also have a big storm system moving into the Northwest that'll drop some snow across the Rockies and some significant rainfall for a good portion of Oregon and Washington. So aside from the storm system on the East Coast that'll be wrapping up, we have winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings out ahead of the two clipper systems that'll be moving into the Midwest. We could see upwards of 6 inches of snow in these locations for certain areas, so more significant snow on the way. And then we have part of the Rockies in a winter storm warning there through parts of northwest Wyoming, where you could see significant snowfall from that storm moving across the Northwest. And here's what we're looking at across the Midwest with the two clipper systems moving in. Upwards of 3 to 5 inches of snow for a good portion of the area here. And we get up into parts of northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, central and northern Michigan. That's where you could see upwards of 6 inches of snow. With both systems combined, these clippers aren't going to be producing a ton of snow at once, but still decent amount of snow for these locations once again. The clipper system will eventually reach the Northeast, not be quite as strong, but will enhance lake effect snows across New York State, and then get into northern New England where it could drop upwards of a foot of snow on some of the higher terrain. So we'll continue to build up the snowpack on areas that already have snow on the ground and add to some locations that don't have snow right now. But if you want some really high snow totals, head out to the Northwest where Wyoming will be picking up upwards of 2 feet of snow potentially from this next storm system moving in. And you can also add on the higher terrain of Idaho, Montana, and Washington as the storm continues to pile up snow in the higher elevations. Another thing to note about this storm moving across the Northwest, it will be producing a ton of wind once it gets into the plains. So on the eastern side of the Rockies, upwards of 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts expected in the high wind warning area. And even the higher terrain, we could be talking about some wind gusts in excess of 80 miles per hour. So this will be producing some really strong wind as it moves through this region. So here's a look at that wind forecast as the storm system moves across this region. The wind will pick up quite a bit going into Tuesday afternoon and then once again on Wednesday as well. So the higher terrain will start to get these really strong wind gusts on Wednesday on the backside of this system as it passes by. But some really strong wind conditions. Definitely be mindful of this if you're traveling in and out of this region. And last thing to note with the forecast here, we do have some really significant rainfall across the Northwest. So we do have some flood warnings for parts of Washington and Oregon. We also have flood watches for the greater Seattle area, and that will continue for a few days as more storm systems head into this area. Even parts of Idaho here also have a flood watch as well, so definitely be careful of flooding if you live in this area or plan on traveling to and from. And if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out more of our video forecasts over here, and I'll see you in the next forecast update.